Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are and whatever you're doing. I hope you're having a fantastic day. I don't want to keep you waiting. Let's get straight into it. Elden Ring patch version 1.09 is here. So let's have a look what's new. As you can see, probably the biggest thing, because this is a fairly small patch to a few of the ones we've had recently, is that ray tracing support has now been added. This is available for the PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC, and can be activated from the respective settings menus. As it states, please note that performance such as frame rate and resolution may be impacted while playing with ray tracing. This is fairly obvious for most of us, but it's worth calling out, and the minimum and recommended tech specs for using ray tracing can be found at the end of the patch notes. Next up, we've got the PvP changes. Most people will know I'm not much of a PvPer myself, but there's been some fairly significant nerfs here, so let's take a look. Again, please note the adjustments in this section do not affect single player or co-op, only PvP. Firstly, the only two buffs, both Inescapable Frenzy and the Lifesteal Fist, have had their power and grab angle increased, and the Lifesteal Fist has had its range increased, making these two very hard to pull off but very powerful moves a lot more viable. And now for all of the nerfs. Surprisingly, every single two-handed jumping attack has been nerfed, just straight up, along with the heavy and running attacks from all fist and claw type weapons. The Founding Rain of Stars spell has been nerfed, along with the spell enhancement effect of the Terra Magica spell. The damage and poise damage of the Wave of Gold skill have been reduced, but only when hitting an opponent over a certain distance. The effectiveness of the Determination and Royal Knight's Resolve skills has been decreased, along with the effects of the Contagious Fury skill of the Jellyfish Shield. Both the Claw Talisman and Lord of Blood's Exaltation Talisman have been nerfed, and further keeping in line with nerfs to bleed builds, both the White Mask head armor from Varre's quest and the Raptor's Black Feathers armor have been nerfed, with the attack power buff and the jumping attack damage buff being decreased respectively. And finally, many of the cracked tiers have been nerfed as well. Magic Shrouding, Flame Shrouding, Lightning Shrouding, and Holy Shrouding have all had their damage buff decreased. That is it for all of the PvP buffs and nerfs, so now let's have a look at all of the real juicy things and what they've done that's going to affect the majority of us. One very minor thing, firstly, added an invincibility window when respawning in the Colosseum. Kind of ties in with the PvP changes, but thought I would call it out. This next one I am very excited about, and it's going to take the community a lot of testing to find out exactly what has been changed, but increased the scaling of the following attributes when infusing weapons with certain Ashes of War: Magic, Fire, Flame Art, Lightning, and Sacred. So in theory, these 5 affinities have all been buffed, but it doesn't say with all Ashes of War, just certain. That could just mean because only certain Ashes of War can have these particular affinities anyway. So it will require a bit of testing, but certainly if they are buffing up Magic, Flame, Lightning, and Sacred, that's going to be amazing. Having more versatility and variety with these particular damage types is going to make for some truly inventive and amazing builds in the near future. Also, the attribute scaling has been increased for a huge range of weapons. Once again, as you can see with the Great Hammer, the Great Axe, the Colossal Sword, and the Colossal Weapon, FromSoft are trying to make them giant, slow weapons much more viable. However, what surprised me to see here is that they're also increasing the attribute scaling for hammers and flails, and the speed, range, and recovery time for some attacks of Great Hammers, Great Axes, Great Swords, and Curved Great Swords has been once again increased. They've done this before, and I guess they thought it's still not fast enough, let's make them even faster, which is amazing. And as you can see a little further down, flail weapons have also had a huge amount of changes, increased the speed of most of the attacks, reduced attack recovery time, that's the time between attacks if you didn't know, and increased poise when using two-handed attacks. Next up, the running attack speed and attack recovery time have been buffed for the following weapon types. This surprised me because a lot of these I feel are already just as powerful as they need to be, but this is amazing. Buffs are always a good thing, right? So for this one, we've got straight swords, curved swords, katanas, the twin blade swords, axes, hammers, and halberds. a huge range of weapons here, all with their running attack speed increased and their attack recovery time reduced. This is a very unique one. The first attack speed for straight swords, curved swords, and whips have been increased. Just the first attack. This is a very specific change, and I really wonder why they've made this change. Especially for straight swords. I didn't feel like the first attack was that slow, but I love straight swords and curved swords, so this is kind of great, right? And next up, they have increased the speed of guard counters pretty much across the board, with every single one of these weapon types that you see right now all having increased speed of guard counters. And it seems like FromSoft finally listened to all of my moaning that whips are just not good enough, and they have reduced the attack recovery time of all whips, and increased the damage of all claw weapons. Whips and claws are both weapon types I've stayed away from in pretty much every single one of my playthroughs. I've never been a huge fan of either of them, but with all of these buffs that they're receiving, I may give them a go. Next up, this one is amazing and something a few people have been crying out for. Added holy damage and faith scaling to the Great Club. I am currently doing a new 100% run of Elden Ring live over on Twitch, and the Great Club is a weapon I thought, I'm not really that bothered about going and seeking out, to be fair. But now they've added this change, I think I'm going to grab it and try it out. Next up on the list, increased the damage negation when blocking holy damage, and decreased damage negation when blocking damage from other affinities, which is going to be great news for new players. And talking of new players, I have a new player guide coming out the day after this video is released. Just thought I'd throw that out there for anyone interested. Next up, this is a very interesting one. Slightly reduced the rolling travel distance for light equipment loads. So they have actually nerfed the power of wearing light equipment. So medium builds are back on the menu, boys. And finally, for the general balance adjustments, we have got a decreased hitbox size for some attacks of the following weapon types: thrusting and heavy thrusting swords, spears and great spears, and halberds. Next up, let's take a look at all of the Ash of War adjustments. There aren't a huge amount this time, but some that are definitely worth talking about. And then we'll wrap up with the usual bug fixes and take a brief look at them ray tracing technical specs. The first one on the list for the Ash of War adjustments is fairly obvious, as they have changed this for PvP too, and this is increased grab range for the Lifesteal Fist. Next up, we have got increased projectile generation speed for the Surge of Faith. There are a few Ashes of War I really feel could benefit from this exact change. So as we go further down this list, hopefully we will see a few more with increased projectile generation speed as well. Next up, we have got Flame Spit. Increased the guard speed and the blocking amount of the skill, as well as adjusting the angle of the fireball. Tongues of Fire receives the exact same treatment in regards to the guard speed and blocking amount. This next one really excites me. The Great Oracular Bubble increased projectile generation speed and reduced the recovery time. It feels like this bubble spell was just not quite good enough to keep up with the others in certain situations. However, now I imagine a lot of people are going to be rocking this Ash of War because it can be insanely powerful. Next up, we have got the Viper Bite, which I must admit isn't one I've used personally, but they have reduced the time before rolling is possible after using this skill. So you're a little bit more versatile, you can roll out of sticky situations before it's too late. Next up, the Shriek of Milos, for anyone that is cosplaying as the Dung Eater out there, increased the close range poise damage. And keeping up with the theme of projectile generation, we have got the Spear Call Ritual receiving the exact same treatment. This is amazing. What an incredibly cool skill. I'm really excited to try out this one myself. And another one that surprises me, and I really didn't think needed this treatment, the Cursed Blood Slash from Morgoth's Sword. This was already crazy powerful. However, it now has increased projectile generation speed and reduced recovery time. Next up on the list, we've also got reduced recovery time for the Goldbreaker and increased attack generation speed from I Command Thee, Kneel. Next up, Radahn's Sword has had a buff to its Ash of War. One of the most powerful, most ridiculous weapons in the game. The follow-up attacks off the back of the Starcaller Cry have had their speed increased. This is absolutely amazing, as if this Ash of War needed to be any more powerful. And finally, for the Ash of War adjustments, for the spinning wheel, we've got increased attack generation speed and added a roll and heavy attack cancel timing while using the skill. Next up on the notes is a load of bug fixes that I won't bore you with here. Link to the article will be down below if you want to go and check them all out yourself. By this point in Elden Ring's life cycle, the game is insanely stable, and for the most part they are very minor bugs that affect a tiny percentage of players. So I won't drag the video on any more than it needs to. Check them out below if you want to see them for yourself. And finally, here is the tech specs if you want to try out ray tracing on the PC, both for Windows 10 and Windows 11 respectively. Now, that is enough from me. I wanted to make this a quick one because I want to go try out Elden Ring version 1.09 some more. My friends, this is all very exciting news. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I hope you have fun with Elden Ring version 1.09. And as always, all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.